there's people who sit on their couches who watch cable TV and they have political opinions. I don't think that's you. You're living in the system every day. You have a very informed position, a very educated position, and you can, I think we're all benefit from somebody who's in it 40, 50, 60, 80 hours a week who says, I don't think this is right because of X, Y, and Z. And I'm interested if you have any specific things to know kind of what you think the shortcomings of our system as you're in your system a little bit different than ours, but the same state, the same laws.
Yeah. What's been on my mind a lot lately is how even within progressive systems, and by progressive system, I mean like somewhere like Brooklyn, where the DA claims to be a progressive prosecutor, there's still this inkling society-wide, I think, to solve more and more issues through the criminal justice system that I think is very damaging. We're seeing a lot of stuff that, accidents, people, two cars collide and the cars that are at fault, we're going to prosecute him instead of letting whatever you would think of as the normal automobile accident process play out. The number one crime that people are arrested for in New York City is driving with a suspended license. That's really not something that in my ideal world, police and prosecutors would be dealing with. Prosecutors love lauding their drug programs to resolve drug cases. What they don't tell you in the news is the way that works is you're arrested for stealing packages from lobbies. That's a very typical crime that people that are suffering from substance abuse are arrested for. You're made an offer of, okay, plead guilty to burglary in the third degree, do a year of treatment. When you successfully complete it, your case is dismissed. But if you fail at treatment, you go to prison for a couple of years. That's still a carceral response to a drug addiction. If I had my world, anyone that was suffering from, anyone that was arrested and it was like a drug case, they'd be dropped off at rehab and never even be prosecuted. And I could go on, but it's just there's a growing movement, I think, and it's because the criminal justice industrial complex has become so big and so self-feeding that we want to answer more and more societal problems with police and prosecutors and the system that we have that's not actually particularly adept at addressing them.
I think one of my criticisms is the most underutilized sentences are short sentences. People do wrong, and there's a way to have sometimes there got to be consequences to actions. You intentionally make a decision to do something you know is wrong. You get caught, but okay. We all have done things we didn't like as a kid, and your parents send you to the room for an hour. Okay, put people in jail for a week. Put them in jail for 2 weeks or 30 days. But you don't never see those sentences. You see a year, 2 years, 3 years. And to us, there's not much difference between giving somebody 5 or 7. It's only 2 digits. You don't think about that's 700. That's 700 days of sitting in a cell. There's to a prosecutor, is 5 or 7. It's kind of the same range, right? It's a pretty serious crime. It's probably a reduction from a VFO. Okay, maybe you can get them 7. Maybe you can get them 5. It's not, but in reality, that's 2 years of somebody's life.
Well, if you think about it, think about how many people, especially in New York City, were in their small apartments during COVID and they went crazy or had a lot of mental health issues because they were stuck there. Now do it for 7 years.
Yeah, that's one thing I see. Whenever there's a big media case and someone that no doubt is accused of doing something bad gets a 20-year sentence, and then there's public outcry about that's not enough time. That just always makes my skin crawl. 10 years is a long time. It's a really long time, and I think it's
even 5 years.
5 years is 1 year is a really long time, and it's very hard for me anytime I see a news story and someone got years, any number of years, and the public response is that's it. I just want you go do a year in prison and tell me how much not enough time that is. It's a long time.
The prosecutors, the offer is 10 or more. We really, really try not to plead to people getting 10 or more years in jail. There's just so many things that can happen at trial. There's very few cases, in my opinion, unless you're talking about a murder, that you should be pleading to upwards of 12, 13, 14 years. I don't know if we've had 3 or 4 of them in the last
Yeah, I
8
don't know.
years here. Not
Not
many.
offhand.
Not many. And I love to tell the process, what were you doing a decade ago? Like, where were you? Most of the prosecutors you're going against were probably in law school. They're what have you done in the last decade? Well, I met my wife, I got married, I had 3 kids, I bought a house, all that stuff. You're gonna take somebody out for a decade. I mean, there better be a good reason.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, any other like closing thoughts on
Katie wants to talk to us.
not what? Rehab. You can say it because we'll just cut this part.
Rehabilitative.
What?
What Katie's talking about is the extent to which we think about prison and the criminal justice system as rehabilitative. And I have the sort of controversial take sometimes that we think too much about that sort of stuff in progressive criminal justice circles. Like, to what extent can we use the criminal justice system to fix this person's life? And I hate that. I really hate that lens of thinking. Like, we're going to take this person that's struggling from substance abuse and we're going to fix their drug addiction. You know how we're going to do it? We're going to hang 10 years in jail over their head. Or 10 years is a lie. It's probably more like 2 years in jail over their head. Or, the idea that we can send people to prison for 5 years and they're going to come out a better person. Like, in general, I think that it can be a very problematic way of thinking, and I think it can be very dangerous when we start letting people that are progressive thinking assume that we can start fixing people's lives, which in general I think is a very dangerous way of thinking, through this system that at its core is not meant to help people, it's meant to punish people.
Yeah, that's a really interesting topic in general. Excellent. I mean, I think that that's true. And you also think about rehabilitation of what percentage of people are, I don't know, I think I've represented about 1,000 people in criminal defense cases. And I can think, around that. And, what you talk about these people who is there a person, assume somebody's guilty. A lot of our clients are guilty of some sort of crime, but who are truly evil, who want to hurt people. That is what, and I can think of 1 or 2 who scare the living shit out of me. And that leaves 999 other people who are like pretty good dudes, pretty good, pretty decent things. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times the natural response, at least in offices like in Brooklyn, that is becoming like, there's this big belief in programming, which certainly, like, I'd rather have my clients do a program than get a prison sentence. But a lot of times we're trying to fix people instead of just responding to one instance of bad conduct. That, like, I remember one time I had a client that he was accused of a hate crime. It was a black man who was an immigrant from a African country who was accused of waving a fork at a gay couple and yelling some homophobic slurs at them. So that becomes a felony hate crime. And, as I dug into it, part of it was like he came from a country where, gay marriage and homosexuality in general is outlawed. And, like, he clearly has, like, some cultural issues he needs to work through. But the DA's response was that they wanted him to do a mental health program. Like, their response is, we can fix whatever's wrong with him by making him do, like, mental health treatment. And it was a classic example of, like, we want to use these square peg tools we have at our disposal to fix issues that we can't actually fix here. And, like, my client did a bad thing, but, like, his end result of, like, pleading to a felony and doing a program that almost everyone agreed, he didn't have schizophrenia. Like, why is he in mental health court? But he did the program. He avoided it. Did it actually fix anything? Probably not. But, it's we have programs, so we use them.
Well, that also kind of goes into account, like, is it the state's job to fix someone?
That's exactly what I'm saying. And certainly, like, I'd rather, as I said, I'd rather my clients do a program than go to jail. But when you start talking about trying to use the criminal justice system to fix people, I think it can be a very dicey thing to talk about. And, like, yeah.
Because again, it's cookie cutter, and every person's case or situation is very different. So not every program is going to fit
Yeah.
every single person.
And, like, I think we don't like racism. We don't like homophobia. We don't like what drugs and substance abuse do to people. But that doesn't mean that the criminal justice system can solve those problems. And I think oftentimes there's a desire to do so because it's such a big, broad system that we have in place that, okay, well, we might as well use it in that way since politically it's not so hot to send people to prison for those things anymore. But it makes me uncomfortable at times, that's for sure.
And you get into dealing with DAs who are making these decisions. They're controlling your offers.
Yes.
And then you have 100 DAs in an office, and you get one person and they do it one way. You get one person, they do it the other way. And that's I think going back to your stuff about prosecutors, that's what we're always really scared of, is someone who does the wrong thing, who really hurts somebody who doesn't deserve it because the prosecutor's a lunatic.